Side with Doug Billings. Thank you very much for joining us all around the planet. We appreciate you. Today on the program, my chance to give President Trump and Vice President Vance some free information about how to remake and reclaim our American system of government. Internal government, the federal government, has more employees in it than over 100 countries around the world. It's way too big. It's way too broad. You know this. It's filled with bureaucracy. And this must be one of the first, if not the first, measures of business in the Trump-Vance administration, to gut, purge, and cleanse the federal government. I'm going to lay out the plan that I wrote about in my book, Remaking the American Political System. Wrote that with my friend Mike Beeler. We're going to talk about it today. I am on this program. You're going to be all the better for it. Ladies and gentlemen, the Right Side with Doug Billings is now upon you. Are you ready? Let's go.
Hey everybody, my name is General Mike Flynn, and I'm here to do a big shout out for my great friend and one of the best in the business, Mr. Doug Billings. Right Side with Doug Billings, Right Side with Doug Billings. Doug is the future of the airwaves when it comes to independent broadcasters and podcasters. He is the new Rush Limbaugh. He's exactly what America needs right now, looking for honesty, looking for wisdom, looking for truth, looking for patriotism. Listen to Doug Billings at Right Side with Doug Billings. God bless you and God bless America, and thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are winning. We're winning, winning, winning. Welcome to the Right Side with Doug Billings. Are you ready?
We are not liberal snowflakes who melt away in the face of tragedy, adversity, and challenge. We are a covenant nation under God, and his divine providence is not dead and it's not gone. It is living within each and every one of you. And you will bring it to life in such a way that the world has never seen before. We never back down. We never give up. We march forward.
Hi, everybody. Doug Billings here. Thank you very much for watching, tuning in all over social media. We're live every day, Monday through Friday, 5 to 6 Central Time. X, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, you name it, and DougBillings.us. And a special thanks to the folks at worldofyoutube.com. You can catch us over there, and at Spreely TV as well. We're everywhere. My gosh, you can't escape us. But don't worry. We create the most intellectually mature audience in all of podcast land. So you see there's something in it for you as well, ladies and gentlemen. Today, how the Trump-Vance administration should govern. This is my free advice to President Trump, Vice President Vance. I am going to be covering some of the topics that I wrote about with my friend Mike Beeler in our book, Remaking the American Political System. Remaking the American Political System, ladies and gentlemen, with my friend Mike Beeler. You can get it on my website, DougBillings.us, or on Amazon, but if you want to support them or not, but go to my website, DougBillings.us. Get a copy of this. It will walk you through what needs to be done. We wrote it last year. It's a perfect time to go get it as we begin to anticipate the new Trump-Vance administration. So lots of people in the book were very kind to write in little support blurbs. We had General Flynn, Devin Nunes, Mike Lindell, John Rich, Chad Prather, Father James Altman, Patrick Byrne, many, many more. I'm all grateful for all of them to write support blurbs for the book and so forth. So if they recommend it, you got to think that, gosh, Billings must have finally done something right. Get the book, check it out, Remaking the American Political System, DougBillings.us. So in the book, I talk about several aspects of what we've got to do to remake our American political system. And by remake, what I mean is we have to reclaim and take back what the intent of the founding fathers was with regards to our government. You see, they made something. They gave something to us. They left us an inheritance that does not need to be fundamentally transformed. Thank you very much. We are in a situation where we need to look at what the government has become. And that is, in a very simple sentence, not at all what the founders had in mind. So long before he was president, let me just set the table a little bit here. Ronald Reagan was telling a story about a person that he had met. He happened to be a Cuban immigrant who came here legally, by the way, went through the entire legal immigration system in the process. And so Reagan tells the story. He says, not too long ago, two friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee. a businessman, this Cuban, who had escaped from Castro, right? And in the midst of the story, one of Reagan's friends interrupts him and says, "You don't know how lucky we are." And the Cuban looks at him and goes, "You mean how lucky I am?" And he goes, "Yeah, well, you don't know how lucky you are that you've got a place to come." And the Cuban says, "You're exactly right. You're exactly right. I had some place to escape to, the United States. If the United States falls, there's no place to go. And if we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to." Very true, very true. And Ronald Reagan tells these stories much better and with more articulate fashion than I do, but you get the gist. America's the shining light, the city on the hill. We say that with all due humility, by the way, but it's the truth. Trump in his new administration with Vice President Vance, they have a huge task ahead of them, beginning in 2025 when they take office. I'm throwing it out there, folks. I'm not being complacent, not suggesting that you should become complacent. We have a lot of work to do. It's a long time between now and November. But if we're allowed to dream and to plan a little bit, here's my suggestions. Now, I'm going to walk through in this program how we do this. This is a big deal. The federal government of the United States, as I said in the introduction of the show, has more employees than 100 nations around the world. This is a big, bloated beast, and we need to parse it down. So let's just go down the list from the book, Remaking the American Political System. First of all, a suggestion that will weed out a lot, and it's open to debate, and it's controversial. No salaries for public servants at the federal level, Congress, Senate. Part of the litmus test, I think, for federal office holders, especially since almost all of the federal office holders and the elected class members that we know are, as we say, of means, right? They have means to take care of themselves. Many of them are wealthy beyond our imagination before they even go into office. So will their promise be to donate their congressional Senate salary? In the Congress, it's $174,000, if my memory serves. If they donate that to their favorite charity in their local community, in the county, the state in which they live, right? Too many federal office holders come into public service as middle class Americans, or maybe upper middle class slightly, but they leave much more wealthy than what they were when they came into office. So we've got to get that under control. Inside stock deals, fancy gifts, retainage of unused campaign funds. What are they doing with that money? All of these things, right? Those things can tempt the best of us. So get rid of it. And while it's unlikely that I agree that it's probably unlikely that we can get the Communist Socialist, the former Democrat Party, to go along with this, They've lived in government housing, right? Their entire political life, housing that's provided for them. How many of us would like to have a place to live with no mortgage and no rent that's provided, right, by our employer? So I think it's time we talk about it. Salaries, shouldn't we give them up? Should we make that happen? Let's remove the temptation for patriotic conservatives. Let's remove all of the gifts, all of the perks, all of the funded things they get. And then I think when our true public servants are able to donate and come in, and when they look at their congressional salaries, I think most of them might consider it. Call me crazy. I'm talking about people like us, not the ones that are already there, the ones that we have to weed out and talk about this in some detail. But I think that we need to look at whether or not we pay these guys. We can support, I can at least, the net donations after salaries to any charity that they want to choose. We reimburse them for travel, of course. I think that's only fair, but we treat it, we don't, what job do you know that gets free housing for life of that job? So I think that we look at that, and I think that it would be worth our while. We don't want to provide them, the means to stay in Washington all the time. Give them a hotel when they're there. Make them go back home they break every Thursday, right? They should be back home with their constituents. They shouldn't be hanging out in their free homes, attending cocktail parties, thrown by the K-State lobbyist group, or the Kansas Street lobbyist group down in Washington, D.C. I know what you're asking. That doesn't prevent the average man or woman from running for federal office, does it, Doug? They need to make a living. I know. We got to think it through. But in these days of lives and fortunes and sacred honor, what are true patriots willing to do? Food for thought with regards to all of that. Also, I think we got to look at, you don't like that idea so much? Let's keep on going down the list. What about eliminating charitable tax donations, or I should say deductions? Think about this for a minute. Roe v. Wade was overturned in the United States Supreme Court on June 24th, 2022, okay? Kansas was the first state in the union that put this thing up to vote for the people to decide about whether or not abortion was going to be legal or not in that state. A major ballot initiative came out. It was called Value Them Both. Sought to prevent the unelected Kansas Supreme Court from declaring that current Kansas laws on abortion were unconstitutional. Okay, so the ballot initiative, Value Them Both, failed miserably in a landslide defeat. A symptom of the spiritual decline and the downright evil that has infiltrated some of our churches in this country was evidenced and put forth as evidence by 30 ordained pastors from mainline denomination churches in Kansas who wrote a letter about how they wanted to they did not want to support the Right to Life, Value Them Both initiative. And they said to their congregations and to the public at large in a letter that read in part, "We recognize the nuance of abortion, and we understand that the grief of losing a potential human life. Therefore, we support measures that work to prevent unwanted pregnancies, including comprehensive sex education, free and easy access to contraception, dismantling systems of patriarchy, reduce instances of rape and incest, and open conversations about sex. We do not support measures that are aimed at controlling people, especially not when it is being done in the name of faith. We claim that Jesus trusted these people who are on the margins, women, the poor, folks of color, and we do." End quote. That was from a letter co-written by 30 ordained pastors, Protestant pastors from mainstream denominational churches in the state of Kansas. It's abhorrent. Those pastors, of course, are going to be accountable to God. We know that. But as a country, I think it may be time to evaluate the tax deductions for activist churches and activist charities. Catholic charities. I'm a Catholic guy. Catholic charities is a problem. Now, the church is much bigger than Catholic charities. The church, as founded by Jesus, isn't affected by Catholic charities, but human lives are. And their ability to get tax deductions ought to be looked at and perhaps eliminated, ladies and gentlemen, as should the churches of those activist pastors. The United States is filled with generous people, and they're going to give to those charities and those churches that they care about, with or without a tax deduction. The people are going to give to the institutions they care about. All right, up against our first break. Ladies and gentlemen, listen, DougBillings.us. You can pick up the book, Remaking the American Political System. I'm just going to walk you through a bit of the highlights about what it takes to remake and to reclaim our federal government away from the radical left, how we do it, what President Trump and Vice President Vance should be doing, I think, in their first 190 days in office. All of that and much more. We're going to go through it when we come back. Stay with me. Cheers. I want to tell you about the good people over at EMP Shield, electromagnetic pulse, ladies and gentlemen. It can fry your home electrical system or your vehicle's electrical system. But if you attach one of these, now this is for your breaker box at home. There's a smaller version that goes on your battery of your car, your vehicle, that will prevent it from being fried in the event of an electromagnetic pulse. Because as you know, thanks to Administrator Biden, many people coming across the border now who don't exactly have the best of intentions. Protect yourself. EMPshield.com. Get huge discounts over there if you use the promo code Doug.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.
Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that you could change the trajectory of your aging process. Look and feel better, live younger, be more active, less pain when you move around, sleep better, diminish the lines and the wrinkles on your face. Really? This is what I'm telling you. It's possible. You see, low stem cell activity happens when we get older, and it could be causing many of the health problems that some people have in the world today. Because as we get older, we have less stem cell activity, which means we age faster and we heal slower. The secret is a clinically proven and patented phototherapy non-transdermal patch, whose technology is the result of over 90 clinical studies and over 20 years of research. Your healthier life can begin today, and you can discover true age reversal. Age reversal, ladies and gentlemen. Please go to liveyoungerwithdoug.us. liveyoungerwithdoug.us, ladies and gentlemen. Get over there today, or if you'd like, text my name, Doug, to 41372. Doug, text it, 41372, and get over to liveyoungerwithdoug.us. Get younger, feel younger. I'm doing it. I'm wearing this patch. I feel great, and so will you. God bless you, ladies and gentlemen. For the Republic, cheers.
The Right Side with Doug Billings. Doug Billings, driving the left crazy with the truth.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Right Side with Doug Billings. Okay, so remaking the American political system. And by that, I mean, how do we reclaim it back from this radical left mob and members of the Uniparty? Look, we've got rhinos and Republicans on there that are still trying to tear apart what the founders intended as far as the governance of this republic. Our federal government has more employees than over 100 countries in the world. And we're talking about this charitable tax deduction that so many churches and charitable organizations get. And I'm suggesting we ought to do away with that if they're activist churches and activist charity organizations. You know, remember Biden assigning 87,000 new IRS agents specifically to come after middle Americans to make sure they're paying their taxes, right? Armed IRS officers, 87,000 of them, coming after us. Well, in my opinion, the IRS, if we allow it to remain, that might be one of the things we get rid of. Bear with me. I'll talk about that in a minute. But they need to go out and after these activist churches and these organizations. Evidence of the obvious is sufficient. For example, look, there's this group, the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service, the LIRS. The Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service, okay, who proudly state on their website, and I'm quoting, the LIRS Asylum Services Network provides 72-hour respite services to immigrants after crossing the southern border. LIRS partners, they ensure dignified welcomes, safe transition for individuals and families released from immigration detention by providing short-term shelter, hot meals, showers, phone access to communicate with relatives, and a course called Know Your Rights Orientation. Transportation, travel coordination, supplies for the journey, and referrals to community service providers in their final destination. All in the name of what they say is social justice. Nonsense. Whenever you see social justice, you can pretty much be assured it's social injustice. Some Lutherans and other Americans may support that kind of work. Let them do it, but without a tax deduction for charitable giving. This is the difference that I'm talking about. What else can we do? President Trump, Vice President Vance, please consider ending all foreign aid until such time we've evaluated what in the world we're doing with our money. Foreign aid has become a black hole, sucking in money that goes to rogue governments, military regimes that don't like us, and Swiss bank accounts for those in the Ukraine. Foreign aid funds abortion across the planet, gender identification and ideology courses and surgery, and threats of cataclysmic world-ending events because of climate change. Meanwhile, China is investing billions in their own initiatives in 150 countries around the planet. The United States Department wastes our federal foreign aid dollars. We are wasteful. We need to stop it all and audit ourselves and get a grip on that money. The U.S. Department of State has grown significantly. I mean, that doesn't take any rocket science to figure that out. From the time of Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson, who was the first Secretary of State, he had a staff of one chief clerk and 3 other clerks. He had a person to translate and a messenger. That was it. And they maintained just 2 diplomatic posts, one in London, one in Paris. They had 10 consular posts elsewhere. More than 230 years later, here we are. The United States State Department's workforce includes 13,000 members of the Foreign Service, 11,000 civil service employees, and 45,000 locally employed staff at more than 270 diplomatic mission buildings worldwide. Ladies and gentlemen, that is gluttony. It's pork. It's nonsense. It's wasteful. Let's agree, that, ladies and gentlemen, that we can at least cut the State Department like other remaining major departments in the cabinet of the president. We can slash a lot of this, foreign aid being among it. Conservative patriots in our new Republican Party have got to take a look at this, and we can no longer just give carte blanche, blank check approval to foreign aid. We've got to get this under control. And that brings me, talk about money, it brings me to the Federal Reserve. We need to audit the Federal Reserve, ladies and gentlemen. Former U.S. Congressman Ron Paul, I like that guy. He's from Texas, a leader of a pro-liberty, pro-free market movement in the United States. Many of you remember him, I'm sure, a medical doctor, famously called in Congress Dr. No, because he said no to every time there was a funding increase, foreign aid or other, no. Dr. No would strike. He believes in the founder's intent, ladies and gentlemen. The United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights has strongly advocated and said that we have to audit the Federal Reserve Bank. And Dr. Paul himself said for over a century, the Federal Reserve has operated in secrecy to the benefit of the elite class and the detriment of the people of this country. It's time to finally bring transparency to monetary policy by auditing the Fed. And I agree with that. That's part of how we remake the American political system. Now, next on the list, of course, this goes without saying, securing the border. I mean, we could go on and on. I've already spoken extensively about this. Securing the border is paramount. There's so many reasons that they're opening the borders, because they want these people to become an electoral base for them, and they want to eliminate our national identity. They want to dilute, if not eliminate, our American heritage, our pride, like I said, our identity. Eliminate it. Just wash us out, drown us out with the illegals that are coming in. So border security. Homeland security, really. Contrary to what the kooks on the liberal left say, it's not climate change that is the most significant existential threat to humanity. The largest existential threat to the United States is China. And we've got to get a real grip on the problem that China presents us, buying up thousands upon thousands of acres of United States farmland. The United States Department of Agriculture reported that foreign entities held an interest in nearly 37.6 million acres of land in the United States. That represents almost 3% of all privately held agricultural land and 1.5% of all of the land in the United States. Who in their right mind is going to let China buy farmland? Should be outlawed. And you know what? As a side note, Missouri has a governor race going on, as many of you do. Bill Eigel, one of the templates for an American state governor. You ought to look him up, because he's not going to allow it, China or any foreign entity, to buy farmland in Missouri. Could be a template for your state as well. Look him up, Bill Eigel, E-I-G-E-L. Now, remember, 2022, just a couple of years ago, China bought farmland near a military base in North Dakota. Oh, sure, spying's not going to be a problem. No. And what about the spy balloons that floated all the way across the heartland? Administrator Biden didn't do a darn thing about them till they were out over the ocean. Spy balloons, farmland. China, unfettered access. Ridiculous. And what about Bill Gates, George Soros, Warren Buffett, Mark Zuckerberg, all of them buying up millions of acres of farmland? What's going on there? We've got to ask the tough questions. Maybe it's something that they could profit from something that people are always going to need. I don't know, say like food, maybe? Yeah. In Gates's case, Bill Gates, he owns a company called Impossible Foods. He advocates for Americans and other Western nations to go towards 100% synthetic beef. In his own words, Bill Gates said this: I do think all rich countries should move to 100% synthetic beef. You can get used to the taste difference, trust me. And the claim that they're going to make it taste even better over time eventually is true. That puts a green premium on what we're doing. And you'd better believe that it's time to act now. Behavior of people needs to change. And if that won't change it, then regulation will. Bill Gates is a real piece of work, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. And the End Animal Cruelty Now kook movement. So, it's a serious thing. They're kooks, but this is going to tear apart hunting, fishing, hunting. Just wait. It's up in Oregon. The End Animal Cruelty Now Act in Oregon failed in 2022, but they're getting it back on the ballot this year. It's going to destroy hunting, fishing, and farming in Oregon. Mark it. End Animal Cruelty Now Act up in Oregon. It's Kookville, ladies and gentlemen. All right, next on the list, eliminate entire departments within the federal government. Tucker Carlson said back in the days when he was on Fox News, he said, people say the federal government seems big, maybe bigger than ever. Well, it's actually the largest employer in the world. The federal government of the United States, nothing else even comes close. Not Google, not Amazon, not the Communist Party of China, nothing. How many people work for the United States government? Let's put it this way, as I said at the beginning of the program. 100 countries around the world whose total population, men, women, children, everybody, are smaller than our federal workforce. Entire countries have less people in them than our federal government. And our founders intended a limited federal government. Folks, this is such a huge issue, such a big deal that gets no airtime at all on the legacy media. Our government is bloated. We need a limited government that focuses on just a couple of things, including national defense, foreign relations, treaties, and trade, and so forth. And that's about it. Get your fingers out of my life. Armed Second Amendment, give me a break. Think of what we have to do to buy a firearm in this country. It's a controversial issue only on the left. The only document we need to bear arms is the Constitution of the United States. Now, that doesn't mean that felons and violent criminals should have them. I grant you that. You and me, there's too much federal involvement in that kind of thing. Now, that makes liberal heads explode. When you say the only document we need in order to bear firearms is the Constitution, their heads explode. Well, it's the truth. Almost everything else can go away or go to the individual states for control. And that's where I want to go with you in the last portion of the show today. Politicians throughout the decades have promised to make the government more transparent, promised to eliminate fraud and waste and abuse. They've lied to us. And I think when Trump and Vance win, my friend, General Michael Flynn, is going to have a huge role in all of this. I'll talk about that in great detail when we come back. Meanwhile, head over to DougBillings.us. Ladies and gentlemen, DougBillings.us. Click on the donate button, and perhaps you would consider prayerfully a recurring monthly donation so that I can continue to bring you the program. Think about that, pray on that, and I would appreciate it. DougBillings.us. I will be right back right after this break. Cheers.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault. worldviewtube.com/vault. And for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
The Right Side with Doug Billings, where we meet in determined prayer and determined patriotism.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to The Right Side with Doug Billings. We're talking about some items that I think President Trump and Vice President Vance should pay attention to when they take over the White House. I'm not trying to I'm not jinxing anybody. Some advice, some free advice to the president and vice president, taken from my book, Remaking the American Political System. You can check out the book on my website, dougbillings.us, if you'd like to. But seriously, some items that I wrote about last year with my friend Mike Beeler about how we can get a grip on what's going on in our federal government. We need to pay attention to this. And I think that we are going to see President Trump assign some people to help tackle this issue. Key among them, General Michael Flynn, is my speculation. And when we look at the government, look, our national debt, $32 trillion or something, and our annual budget, if we can even get used to that word budget, because we certainly don't keep it, right? We use the word, but it's meaningless. The budget is approximately $5 trillion with a $1 trillion deficit spend each year. So the size and the scope of government at all levels continues to spiral absolutely, completely out of control, and we need to make a serious change. It's my hope that President Trump spends a lot of time on this in his second term in office. But let's start there at the federal level. Let's take a look. Let's think about it together. And by the way, if you want to talk about it with me, happy to do that. We take calls, 901-316-8404, 901-316-8404. Call up, get in line. The phone lines are open. Get in the queue, and we will talk to you. Be happy to do that. 901-316-8404. So the federal government, we need to look at major cuts, and I'm going to go for it here. Federal government can lead by example. Now, do you think the federal government's going to do it on their own? Probably not. So we're going to have to dictate that some of this gets done. And that's where I think my friend General Michael Flynn comes in. I think that he'll be suited, capable to go in a non-congressional approved appointment. We don't want to waste time in front of a congressional hearing with General Flynn. Much too important of a man is he to go through that nonsense. So Trump needs to appoint him to a role that is not required to get congressional approval, and he needs to be like the Secretary of Accountability, something like that, right? He needs to go in and absolutely cleanse, gut, and purge the Department of Justice to begin with. Let's just take that one for starters. That includes, of course, as you know, the FBI, the CIA, Department of Justice. It would be a role, I think, that he would be well suited for. He knows where the bodies are, as we say, and he's been there, done that. He knows the players. He knows the mechanism. He knows the rubrics of what goes on in that department. So Department of Justice first. That's an entire department that needs to be gutted, cleansed, and purged. All right. Much too many details to get into all of that right now, because I want to mention a few other departments that we need to think about eliminating, such as the Department of Education. Eliminate it and grant the states the right to manage their education of the children within their states to their own standards, their own morals, their own principles, as voted upon and urged by the people of those states. Government then would be of the people in those states and by the people and much closer to the people, not from some mandate off in Washington, D.C. to Timbuktu in Idaho or Better Place USA, Montana, whatever. Get the federal government, shut down the Department of Education, please, Mr. President. Another item on the chopping block, as far as I'm concerned, the National Public Radio and the National Public Broadcasting Service, gone. Look, folks, we've got hundreds of satellite radio stations at our beck and call. Pandora, iHeartRadio, Google, Amazon Podcasts, all of it, Sirius XM, all of that is out there. Who needs government-funded radio? Nobody needs it. We got 1,000 cable TV stations. No longer need public television. Look, if Big Bird is that popular, somebody can syndicate him. Pay for him to go up on the satellite system. Get rid of and stop paying for the National Public Radio and the public broadcasting services. Absolutely wasteful. Another one. Now, look, I'm a believer in what I'm going to tell you to cancel here. The National Endowment for the Arts needs to go away. Let art stand on its own beauty and its own merit in the eyes and the wallets of its beholders. Let them pay for it. We don't need to fund a department, the National Endowment of the Arts. The states and the people within them who love the arts and want to support the arts always will, and they should. The arts are not by themselves an evil thing. But when the National Endowment for the Arts and the federal government gets involved, it becomes a mess. Another one, the Small Business Administration. Get rid of it. Gone. Why? Because we learned in a big way that the big government really does not like us. We saw it just a few years ago, clear as day. They called us non-essential. Remember, COVID pandemic, the wreckage, the shutdown of economies that was all put forth by the radical communist socialist, formerly known as Democrat Party. It was their fault that our economy was wrecked. They're the ones that mandated the closings, the wreckage, and the absolute shutdown of work in this country. We still haven't fully recovered from that. Shut down the Small Business Administration. Let the states and the people, the good entrepreneurs within the states, come up with their own funding for that. We can do it. We can do it. Okay, a couple of biggies here. The Centers for Disease Control and the National Institute of Health, the CDC and the NIH, gone. Both are underneath the umbrella of the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS. They should be eliminated, ladies and gentlemen. Gone. First of all, nobody in America trusts them anymore. Their work can be replicated and produced by peer-reviewed domestic university research teams funded by block grants from Congress and under the guidance and the strict oversight of state boards of regents. That's how we do it. Get rid of these groups. This is absolutely crazy that they could mandate how you live your life. No more rogue gain of function, by the way, in foreign labs in China and the Ukraine. Gone are those days. Fauci and Birx, I don't know what's going to happen with them. That's maybe a topic for a different show. World courts, I don't know. I wouldn't look for massive roundups of these people, but we need to think of something. And I think that the answer is you just go after these departments, first of all, and eliminate them, get rid of them. And I'm not pretending it's easy. It's not easier said than done. I get it. A lot of work, a lot of determined patriotism needs to go into this, but we need to begin the process. What about the Transportation Security Agency? I think that you ought to privatize that kind of a thing. George W. Bush should have privatized it when he created it, but he didn't. So now here we are. Another one, the Department of Agriculture. Send farm management and rural development, food inspection, all of that back to the states. It would be great local, positive economic development for states. We don't need a federal department to do this. Return it to the states. Cut the fat, cut the park. Let the state park systems, by the way. We have beautiful parks across this country. I'm a big fan of them. We need to protect them. But let the state park systems take over the management of national forests that are within the boundaries of each state. Think about this. What savings and what a change of dynamic we could have. And that leads me to the Department of the Interior. Look, those within that department, when you really look at the Department of Interior, it's basically technical departments like the United States Geological Service or the Bureau of Reclamation, the Bureau of Land Management, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Agency. All of that stuff can go back to the states, and they can manage all of that within their own boundaries. Very simply done if we would just have the guts to do it. And what about another one under the Department of Interior? It always makes me chuckle. The Bureau of Indian Affairs, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Have they really helped Native Americans? I mean, really? Let the states, again, honor and treasure their indigenous tribes and populations. It can go back to the states. We just don't need to spend so much money on all of these federal agencies and departments, and I think that we should slice and dice them. We need President Trump, Vice President Vance to consider this. All of these things mentioned in my book, Remaking the American Political System. Remaking the American political system. It's about reclaiming America, back to the intent of the Founding Fathers. You can get the book on my website, DougBillings.us. And look, this is not so much me pitching a book as it is pitching America. Regardless of the book, I think that President Trump and Vice President Vance would be best served and well received and well met if they began to actually do some of these things. So I'm just mentioning the topics of key interest and a few of the nuts and bolts underneath each. The book contains the guts of what to do and how to do it. But I think that we need to look at it. And the national parks, like I was saying, absolutely are a national treasure. We have to allow, I think, the consideration, at least, of private contractors coming. Think about the hospitality industry, right? Bid on long-term management contracts for these very precious parks under the oversight of a streamlined commerce department and make it state-based. So again, getting rid of the federal arm of all of this. Ladies and gentlemen, a bit more to talk about as I am about ready here to send you off into another joyous venture into the land of capitalism. But before I go, reminding you, please, take a look at DougBillings.us. We have Carla on the phone. I know, Carla. Hang on. Be patient with me, my friend. I will be right there with you. Ladies and gentlemen, the phone lines are open, 901-316-8404. 901-316-8404. I will be right back after this quick break. Stay with me. Cheers.
We live in uncertain times. In fact, we live at a time when our own governments all over the world are warning us that there could be big problems with our power grid. World War III seems to be right on the horizon. Let me ask you this. Do you have a satellite phone? Should communications go down with cell towers? Do you have a satellite phone to get a hold of that college student or your spouse who travels, whatever it might be, to get a hold of your senior adult parents? We have satellite phones at worldviewtalk.com, and you get the satellite phone for free when you sign up for their very reasonable payment programs for the service. Sign up for the service with a reasonable contract, get the satellite phone for free. Worldviewtalk.com. You'll also find they have, well, what I now have, which is a solar generator. Yeah, I have a gas generator, an LP propane generator, but what if that goes down? I want to back up to my backup. So I now have a solar generator as well. You'll find them at worldviewtalk.com. Check it out today, worldviewtalk.com. Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHouseBG.com.
The Right Side with Doug Billings, where we meet in determined prayer and determined patriotism.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. The Right Side with Doug Billings. We're going to be going to the phone calls here in just a moment. 901-316-8404. Please call in. Love to talk to you about all of this. Reclaiming our American system of government. Remaking our American system of government. And that means, of course, getting back to the intent of the founding fathers. This is what we do. And it's going to take, as I say, determined prayer, determined patriotism. Determined patriotism is the hard work of it all. And again, I remind you, we have to bless ourselves with the gift of patience, because these remedies that I'm talking about, I believe in them very much, but none of them will happen overnight. We need to engage in getting them done. So I'm hopeful that President Trump, Vice President Vance begin to address these issues, the cuts and the reduction in size of our federal government. And that's part of the reason why I was so on board with J.D. Vance, because he's young, primarily. He's smart. He's the smartest guy in the room in many cases, ladies and gentlemen, trust me. And he can be, with, I think, the tutelage of President Trump, and he's already a MAGA guy. I know that early in his career he said some things against Trump, but that was years ago. And so we give the guy some grace, and maybe he will be the standard bearer for 2028, 2032. We shall see. But I want to see what you all have to say about some of this. 901-316-8404. And from Kansas, we have Carla. Carla, welcome to The Right Side.
Thank you for taking my call.
Carla, how are you? You're welcome. I'm glad you're here.
And thank you for your report on the 30 pastors in Kansas. There is an abolition movement in Kansas. We are bleeding Kansas again.
Yeah.
The Value Them Both Amendment came about after years of trying to get an amendment to our Constitution to state that there is a human being at the moment of conception. But Kansas is really not a red state. It's a purple state.
Right.
And for some reason, we cannot get the Republican leadership. Of course, we have a Democratic governor right now, but we can't get the Republican leadership to do what they need to do. And in fact, what isn't helping are some pro-life organizations who are compromising. And that's how Value Them Both came about. Instead of the pro-life people standing for constitutional amendment that would state that life begins at conception, this is what they came up with. I'll read it to you. Regulation of abortion. Because Kansans value both women and children, the Constitution right now. But we can't get the Republican leadership to do what they need to do. And in fact,
Carla, we might be losing you a bit. Are you speaking? You went a little bit distant. Oh, we lost Carla. Carla, if you're out there, if you're listening live, feel free to give us a call back, 901-316-8404. You were a little bit dicey there throughout the phone call, but promise it wasn't us. The call just dropped, so feel free to call back. So let me talk a little bit about this abortion issue, and because President Trump obviously talks about it often on the campaign trail, and he's taken a lot of heat, well, not a lot. He's taken some heat for what people are claiming that he's backing off of abortion. Let me just say a few things about it. I'm pro-life from conception to natural death. Okay, I am probably more pro-life than a lot of Republicans because I'm not necessarily on board with the death penalty. I think that life is sacred. We all have the divine spark of God within us, no matter what we do. You can imagine any criminal in history or in current day, they still have the divine spark of God's sanctity of life within them. So I'm full bore, all ahead, pro-life. Roe v. Wade was faulty because it took an issue like abortion and gave the federal government the right to say that you can get an abortion. Well, the federal government doesn't have that power per the Constitution. That is a state issue. And so the current Supreme Court rightly overturned Roe v. Wade and gave the decisions regarding abortion back to the states where it should be. That's the intent of the founding fathers. And so each state now, and Carla was touching on this a little bit in her phone call, we have legislators in the state of Kansas. It's Republicans who don't always do Republican things, right? So we have to, you and me, ladies and gentlemen, you and me, we have to work and do the work of determined patriotism. Vet your candidates. Anyone who wants to put an R behind their name and get their name on the ballot must be vetted. We got to ensure that, to the best of our abilities, at least, that these people will be conservative in their approach. All right. So that's right. And so Trump wants that to remain in the states. And that is the intent of the founding fathers. So there will be states that outlaw abortion, and there will be states that allow abortion. That's where we come in. If we're in a state where Kansas is a abortion destination state now. So we have to do the work of determined patriotism to get involved and get legislators in the state to make sure that we can remedy that situation. We have a couple of, Ed, I know you're out there. Bear with me. Hang on. We've got Carla back, who we dropped just a moment ago. Carla, welcome back.
Thank you. Let me finish reading the amendment. So the regulation of abortion, because Kansas value both women and children, the Constitution of the state of Kansas does not require government funding of abortion and does not create or secure a right to abortion. To the extent permitted by the Constitution of the United States, the people, through their elected representatives and state senators, may pass laws regarding abortion, including but not limited to laws that account for circumstances of pregnancy resulting from rape or incest, or circumstances of necessity to save the life of the mother. Now, this sounds really good, but the whole premise behind it is kind of explained in the explanation for when you go vote. The explanatory statement is, the values in both amendments would reserve to the people of Kansas, through their elected state legislators, the right to pass laws to regulate abortion, because there is no Kansas constitutional right to abortion or to require the government funding of abortion. What they're essentially saying is they didn't want to do away with abortion. They want to regulate it.
Yeah. So
it just goes under that heading of health care again. And it is not health care. It is murder.
Yes, 100% agree. Carla, before I have to let you go, just a quick question. What, in your view, with regards to Kansas and what we just heard you read, I mean, who is, you must have clearly a rhino problem in Kansas. Is there a vetting process? Do you know if people in individual counties, Republican committeemen and women, have a vetting process in place for candidates who want to put the R behind their name?
As far as I understand, no. And I would tell you in my county, which has become liberal, Kansas State University here at Manhattan, Kansas, that there are rhinos all over, and they seem to have the power.
Yeah. Well, I think that we are, Carla, listen, we stand shoulder to shoulder on this issue. We have a lot of work to do. I don't think that it's an impossible task, but we have to unite. I think there are a lot of people waking up to the issue. I think tides are turning to a degree, and we just need to press forward. We don't give up. Obviously, I know that you're not giving up. You're not suggesting that. In fact, what I'm hearing in your voice is a lot of determination and a lot of what I call determined patriotism. and I appreciate you. You are one of the patriots out in the country. And by the way, I might mention my oldest son went to K-State, so I'm very familiar with Manhattan, the Little Apple, and EMAW, as they say. Every man's a wildcat. Thanks, Carla, for the phone call.
Hey, real quickly, can I suggest that people go watch, and it's on YouTube, A Storm Comes Rolling Down the Plain, and check out freestates.org. It's the abolition movement out of Oklahoma, and that's what has been used as our base here in Kansas.
You got it. I appreciate you mentioning that, Carla. Thanks, and I'm glad that you're on the right side. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you can still call. We got a few minutes left, and we've got Ed from Florida on the line. Ed, welcome back to the right side.
Taking my call. I've enjoyed most of your program here regarding the cutback of government.
Thank you.
But I have a couple things that I'm interested in, which is restoring some of the rights that people in this country used to have. But the Patriot Act made it such that these folks on January 6th were declared to be terrorists when they're not, and they've been imprisoned without due process. And I think that needs to be one of the high priorities that our new administration, including Congress and Senate, take up. And another thing, we're talking about all the NGOs are getting with the tax exemption and so forth. Most of them are getting most of their money from the United Nations, who we are funding to perpetuate, expand, and continue the invasion coming in through the southern border. And so I would like to see a defunding of the United Nations. And the third thing I'm concerned about is the WHO, who's now trying to get such that they can regulate down in the city level of every country that's a member, using as enforcement the United Nations Army to force people to take injections and things like that. So
Right.
those things are really high on my list of concerns.
Ed, 100%. And if this was a 3-hour show, I would talk. Let me talk about one of those things, and that's the United Nations. You're going to be happy to hear my speculation, and I touched on it a little bit earlier. My friend General Michael Flynn, he and I have spoken about this, and I've mentioned to him, General, I think you ought to be like the Secretary of Accountability thing. And he kind of chuckles and has kind of a ring to it there, Doug. So although we've talked about it, I am not saying that that's going to happen, but I'm saying it's an interesting thought. And part of that Secretary of Accountability, along with eliminating a lot of the gluttony that we have in our federal government, Department of Education, gutting, cleansing, and purging the Department of Justice, and so forth, I was going to get to this point, and this is what I think you'll like it. I really do think that General Michael Flynn and President Trump are going to withdraw the United States from the United Nations. I really do have a gut feeling that that's going to be something they work towards. And then obviously make NATO pay their fair share of protecting Europe and the rest of the world. But it's a shocking statement to some, I think, but one that I think will be on the table at least, withdrawing the United States from the United Nations, something to see if that will happen. But I think that there's a strong chance that there's at least, well, I know there's discussion of it. We will see if anything comes to bear on that. So what do you think? That might be a way to go there and at least assuage some of your concerns. The WHO, the WHO, the World Health Organization, obviously needs to be dealt with. You're going to see President Trump deal with J6 prisoners swiftly. On day one, you're going to see decisions about that nonsense come down. You're going to see pardons, and you're going to see the doors open for class action suits or individual civil suits against the federal government from these people who are locked up illegally without due process. So, Ed, I appreciate you very much. I know, we've spoken a couple of times on the program, and I've got about 30 seconds left. So let me just say thank you. Thank you for your patriotism and for your love of this republic. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it. We are at the end. Wow, time flies. Get the book if you can, Remaking the American Political System. Check it out. These are the things that we need to talk about openly and honestly and often. Reduction of the federal government under the new administration of President Trump, Vice President Vance. Enjoy the rest of the convention, and I will see you tomorrow night. Believe it, ladies and gentlemen, for the Republic. Cheers.
All right, this is Dr. John Witcher, and welcome to Code Blue. We are a new channel. We're so honored that Brandon House has invited us to be a part of his program. And so we're here today, and this is our first